you guys for coming out tonight. We're excited to be here to talk to you about how you can use your car insurance for your bicycle or just as a pedestrian. We have a lot to share, and we know that Alachua County in particular is a very big bicycling community, and so we feel that this information is really important for the community to know, and we hope that you find some value in it tonight. So I'm Marie Banks. I'm an attorney at Schackow Mercadante, and I'm up here with Brian Schackow. He's also an attorney at Schackow Mercadante, and I guess we will go ahead and get started. Next slide. So like I said, I'm Marie Banks. I've been an associate attorney for a couple of years at the firm. I'm a double gator, which means I went to undergrad here as well as law school. I'm an artist. I'm trying to get more involved in the art community here in town. I know Gainesville's a really big art community. And I'm married, but have 0 kids, as you can see.
Marie made this. I'm a little embarrassed because it says athlete on there. And I like to play sports and stuff like that, but I don't know if I still consider myself an athlete. But she made it, so I'll take it. But I'm one of the partners at Schackow Mercadante. I'm a Gator grad, undergrad, and I went out to Denver Law School. Athlete there, married with 4 kids. The kids are the athletes in our family. We've got a daughter running cross country, daughter playing soccer, son plays football and baseball, and the other daughter's playing tennis. So that's what we like to do. You can always catch us at a ball field or a tennis court or something lately. Next slide. All right, some scary facts. Some scary facts for you all as bicyclists and as motorists, for that matter. Florida is one of 2 states that does not require drivers to carry liability insurance. Liability insurance, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but that's the stuff that covers you in case someone else hurts you for your damages. So in Florida, you don't have to have that insurance. One of 2. We think Nebraska's the other one. So in addition to that, 1 in 4 of every driver, these are the statistics right now, 25% of all the drivers carry no coverage at all. So the first bullet point deals with the basic PIP and PD only. You don't have to carry liability. The second bullet point is 25% don't even have the PIP or PD. They have 0 coverage at all. And those are the people you really got to watch out for. And as a bicyclist, you're sharing the road with these people. Very, very dangerous. I call it, it's like the Wild West out here right now. Lots of people driving, lots of people on the roads, and it's a literal gamble whether you get hit by someone with coverage. So it's really scary. Next slide.
All right, some basic law. Joseph put some pamphlets up on the countertop over there from floridabicycle.org. They're very helpful. Grab one on your way out if you don't have one already. I'm just going to touch on some very basic law issues. One thing you want to keep in mind as you're traveling on your bicycle is make sure that you're traveling in the same direction as traffic. So that means as close to the right curb as practicable. That's what the law says, practicable. There are times maybe when you can move away from that right curb, but you need to make sure that you are traveling in the same direction as traffic. If there's a bike lane, stay in the bike lane. I put comparative negligence on here because if you happen to travel in the direction against traffic, you could get a ticket for it. And if you're hit by a car, you might be partially at fault for your injuries. And what comparative negligence means in the state of Florida is, let's say they find that you're 50% at fault for the accident because you were traveling in the wrong direction. You're going to get half the compensation you would have. That's how Florida does it. You can travel on the sidewalk as a bicyclist. Make sure, or I would suggest that you travel in the same direction as the traffic again. I don't believe the law says that you have to. It's probably just the wisest thing to do if you can. You have the same rights as a pedestrian on the sidewalk, but you must give audible signal before passing a pedestrian. So you really are supposed to yield the right-of-way to pedestrians if you're riding on, I'm sure a lot of you know all of this already. one thing the law is clear on is you're not supposed to wear headsets or headphones if you're riding your bicycle. And you can check out floridabicycle.org. That's where I actually got a lot of this information. It's a great website. Again, check out those pamphlets on the countertop. Next slide.
Okay, I see one guy brought his deck sheet. You brought yours? Okay, this would be the time to get those out if you have it, and we'll go over this. We're going to explain the basics of car insurance. So the first thing, and this is that thing we just talked about, bodily injury protection. Bodily injury, you'll see the initials, you'll hear the initials BI a lot. This is the insurance that applies when you cause an accident and injure somebody else. Your bodily injury insurance is going to be the insurance that compensates them. It's the same as if someone injures you, it's their fault. You're going to be looking to see if they have bodily injury coverage. We can go through that later. You've got a nice policy. That's a lot of coverage. That's good. That's very good. Bodily injury policies pay your damages that you sustain. Here's some examples of the damages: medical bills, pain and suffering, lost wages. All of those things are considered damages, and you're looking to be compensated from the liability policy of the at-fault driver. Again, this is the insurance that's not required in the state of Florida. So back a couple slides, don't go back, but I said 1 in 4 don't have any insurance at all. We think the number is about 50% have no more than $10,000. So you can have 0. The next jump up is 10,000, and $10,000 does not go very far in cases like this. So we're going to tell you how you can protect yourself in a few slides. So let's go to the next slide. Because Florida doesn't mandate all the drivers carry liability insurance, they do give us an opportunity to cover ourselves, and that's what this is: uninsured or underinsured motorist. And I'll tell you this is the absolute most important coverage you can have in our state. It protects you in certain situations. Number one, there's no insurance at all. 1 in 4 drivers don't have any insurance. If you get hit by one of those guys or girls, you will be covered if you have UM. Number 2, there's insurance, but it's only the basic insurance of PIP and PD, which we'll go over those in a second. Sorry, throwing those acronyms out there. But there's no BI insurance. There's no liability insurance to get your damages paid from. Number 3, and this is what the underinsured motorist portion stands for, there's not enough BI insurance. So let's say the person has a $10,000 liability policy or a BI policy, but your case is worth $100,000. That's when you go to your UM carrier and you say, I'm hurt really bad. My case is worth $100,000. They only had 10. I need $90,000 from my uninsured motorist policy. And then, and this happens a lot in bicycle accident cases, your UM policy also steps in if there's a hit and run, and what we call that legally is a phantom vehicle. The vehicle has left the scene. So again, this is critical coverage. I hope everyone has it. If you don't have it, if you don't remember anything else we say tonight, buy UM, buy as much as you can. UM basically steps in the shoes of you're buying a liability policy, assuming that the other person's not buying one, and it pays the exact same things. It pays medical bills, pain and suffering, lost wages, things of that nature, to you, the injured party. Again, this is not a required coverage in the state of Florida. It's a highly recommended coverage. Some agents want to sell UM, some don't. However, you must sign. It's so important. The legislature actually wrote in the law. It's bold 12-point type on every policy. I am electing not to purchase certain valuable coverage called uninsured motorist. So when you're going through those forms, read them. And if you ever see anything in bold and print, you know that's important. Take a second, call somebody, call a friend. But UM is super important. Next slide.
All right, so next is the personal injury protection. This is what we lovingly refer to as PIP insurance. PIP applies regardless of who's at fault for the accident. PIP is required in the state of Florida, so if you register your vehicle here, you're required to purchase PIP. As we said, 1 in 4 drivers in Florida are going against the law, but it's a $10,000 minimum amount. We call it a pot of money. This will pay 80% of your medical bills if you're injured in an accident. It'll also pay 60% of your lost wages if you had to miss work because of your injury in an accident. In order for PIP to apply, you must be evaluated by a doctor within 14 days of the accident. That's very, very important. We're pointing to Dr. Alex Huggins. He's here tonight, and I'm really thankful he's here. He's a chiropractor. He knows exactly how important this is. The deductible that you asked about, sir, may apply here if you have a deductible on your policy. Your PIP insurance, a lot of times we see either $500 deductible or $1,000. That means you're responsible for the first $500 or the first $1,000 of medical bills before your PIP will start kicking in. Next slide. So property damage liability is another required coverage in the state of Florida. This applies when you cause an accident and damage someone else's property. That could be a car, a bike, fence, house, anything that's their property. You have to purchase $10,000 as a minimum. For collision coverage, this applies regardless of who causes the accident. So if you have, as we said, you're required to have PIP and property damage. You're not required to have collision coverage, but it is wise in the event that somebody runs into you and they don't have insurance. This will cover either fix your bike or will fix your car if you're in a car. Your insurance will pay for all of those repairs. Again, the deductible may apply in this case if you have one.
I'll add one more thing about that collision coverage. It's usually a 2-part coverage. It's called comprehensive or collision coverage. Before the meeting started, we were talking about the hurricane that might be coming to Gainesville and what happens and all those kind of things. So I think if for some reason if a tree would fall on your car, some homeowners could be involved, but also the comprehensive coverage would kick in there. I know people make claims under the comprehensive coverage if there's a hailstorm and they have body damage, those kind of things. So that's why that's such a valuable coverage to have. Okay, so what of all these protections, we just threw a lot of coverages at you, a lot of things, and we're going to be here to meet individually, take questions. How do these apply to bicycle accidents? And that's because that's kind of what we're here to talk about. So if you are a cyclist and you're also an owner of a car, that's this first area here. So your PIP that you purchase on your auto policy, if you're in a bicycle accident involving another motor vehicle, your PIP is going to apply to that case. And you're going to have $10,000 worth of medical coverage that's going to pay 80% of any bills, 60% of any lost wages that you suffer. Then you will be able to hopefully pursue the at-fault party's bodily injury limits that we talked about. And if that driver does not have bodily injury coverage, hopefully you have your UM. Seeing how this kind of works now? So hopefully you'll have your UM to fall back on if they don't have any or if they don't have enough. Okay? Let's talk about... Great question. Will they fix damages to your bike? Yes. That was not on here. The damages to your bicycle would be fixed under the at-fault party's property damage claim. So they will either give you some money to get the bike repaired. Sometimes the bike is a total loss, and they'll give you money to replace the bike completely, or you can take it to a shop and have it fixed, and they'll pay for all that directly. Does it depreciate like you can do a car? It depends on the bike. If it's an old Earth Cruiser, probably not. But if it's one of these nice new race bikes that are a couple $1,000 bucks, absolutely, absolutely, that would be something to think about. Okay, option 2: if you don't own a car and you're involved in a bicycle accident with a motorist, there's a couple hurdles to cross here to see exactly what coverage is going to apply. So the first question we'll ask is, do you live with a resident relative, that's usually just a family member, that owns a car? And you may be eligible under that resident relative's policy to use their PIP just by living in the house. And this gets a little dicey. Are you a disclosed member of that household? Things like that. But that's the first place you look if you don't own your own car, is do you live with someone who owns a car? And then PIP may follow you around, may attach as you're riding. If so, that PIP will apply. And also, what's really good about this, if you would do the same thing regarding liability coverage, you would still seek the BI policy of the other car, and if they don't have it, that same resident relative's policy will also provide you uninsured motorist protection. So very, very good laws there. Exactly. My belief is you don't have to be a covered, named insured or anything like that, but you do have to be disclosed. Lots of times we get issues where the household members are not all disclosed, and that causes some real problems. And that goes into the rate-making process. How many people might we cover if there's an issue? So it's not fair to the insurance companies to just say there's just one person here and then have... Exactly. So they just need to know about them. But yes. Okay. The question is, where is that on the insurance policies? Usually it's part of it. It'll ask a question, are there any driver, or are there any residents over the age of 13 living in the household? Not drivers, but any residents, any household members. And so technically, in a college town like this, you might want to consider listing roommates. If you're living in roommate situations, boyfriend-girlfriend situations, technically, if the insurance company wants to really get technical on that, they could deny coverage if you don't list that you live with a roommate or somebody else. That could technically have access to your PIP or technically have access to your car. Oh, I just need to move your car real fast. And, so things happen. So we can talk more about that too. Am I on the next slide? Next slide. Okay. So option 3 here is if no one in your home owns a car, and you obviously don't own a car, and you get in a bicycle accident with another motor vehicle. A very good law here. The at-fault driver's PIP insurance will pay your medical bills. This is very good, and this happens all the time up on campus. Students don't own cars, they don't live with anybody who owns a car, and they get hit by cars. And I'm representing a young woman right now, thankfully had access to the at-fault driver's PIP and was able to go see a doctor. She had a fractured foot and get treatment that she needed. So very good law. The at-fault driver's BI insurance will also apply. And we wrote health insurance on here. No, we need them. We need them here. Health insurance is always a factor here. Anytime, if PIP would not apply, obviously you hope you have health insurance, and that would help pay the bills. And also, health insurance will get involved. PIP is usually in that $10,000 window. So anytime your bills exceed $10,000, which in a more serious case, that can happen pretty easily, that's when health insurance will kick in. So another important thing to consider is... I know where she went. I know exactly where she went. We'll talk about that later. Sure. Yeah, exactly. Okay, next slide.
Okay, so what about when an accident occurs? What should you do? Whether you're a pedestrian or a bicyclist or a car driver, this is what you should do. First thing, call the police. Always, always make sure somebody calls the police. Why? Because you're going to want the accident report, and you're going to want to exchange. The police offers this really wonderful document, exchange of information. He gets all of the insurance information with everyone's policy numbers. If you don't have that, it can be very difficult to get that information. I actually had a gentleman come into our office who was riding his bicycle, was hit by a car. They didn't call the police. He came to me. We had no idea who the insurance company was. Thankfully, the gentleman who hit him, the car driver, gave his phone number, asked if he needed anything. Somehow we were able to get he felt bad enough to give him the insurance information. He didn't have to because the police wasn't there. So you want to make sure the police are always called. Take pictures. Always take pictures. Take pictures of your bicycle if you're riding a bike, your car, all the damage. And also you want to take pictures of the location of the accident. That will help you when you're trying to make your claim with the insurance company. This is probably the most important part, is seek medical evaluation immediately. The PIP laws give you 14 days. Don't wait that long. Go the same day if you can. We would suggest that you go to an urgent care or a clinic. You can go to an ER. As was already mentioned, ER bills can be very, very pricey. We have 2 big hospitals here in town with very different methods for billing, and that's all I'm going to say. So you can also see a chiropractor immediately. Dr. Huggins has seen a lot of my clients, and you don't have to go to an ER, but you just need to make sure you're getting medical evaluation immediately. And call your attorney. That's a very important part too. Did you have a question? The question was, is it true that if so the question is, if we get hit by a car and the person doesn't want to share information, that they're not actually required to share information. Do you have anything to say towards that? I mean,
I would just say if you're not willing to share the information with us, then we're just going to have to call the police immediately. At that point, I'd be taking pictures of license plates and things like that. You can't force anyone to do anything. As soon as if they ever would refuse to give you stuff and then leave, now they've committed a crime, hit and run, fleeing the scene of an accident, things like that. So.
I would say, she asked, at what point is it considered leaving the scene of an accident? I believe if you leave the scene without giving any of that information, would be leaving the scene of an accident. Right. You can certainly move your car out of the roadway, do whatever is best for public safety, for the safety of you, but that's why we really, really say it's important to call the police. People will usually cooperate if the police are involved, and most of the time, people will give the information. Did you have something else?
Yeah, just weirdly, this week I have a case that calls, and the woman doesn't have insurance, doesn't have anything, but was giving out all of this information, like, here's my driver's license, here's this, here's that. It was like the opposite of what she should do. She even gave a credit card number. If you need anything, charge it to my credit card. And then she left. She fled the scene, and thankfully we had gotten a picture of the tag so we could prove who that was, and we're trying to find her, but strange things happen at these accident scenes. She was, I don't even know, but it's really strange things happen at those events.
So things can get really complicated with accidents, which is why you should call an attorney. Next slide. Why call an attorney? For one, attorneys know your rights. They know what you're entitled to. You're going to get the best compensation possible than if you try to go at it alone with an insurance company. Attorneys will also share the burden. They're the ones dealing with the insurance companies every day so that you can focus on getting better, getting your treatment, and not being hassled by insurance adjusters. Also, personal injury attorneys work on a contingency fee basis. This means that we only get paid if we get you a settlement for your claim. So you don't have to worry about being billed by the hour for all the work that we're doing. We just take a percentage of the settlement as a fee. So I've had a lot of clients who were nervous about hiring an attorney. They thought it was going to be very expensive, and when I explain how complicated the process is and what our fee structure is, they say, well, I really don't have anything to lose, because if you don't get me money, then I don't have to pay you. So wonderful. And another thing that I think there is a bit of a misconception is that attorneys are always filing lawsuits. For most accident cases, we're just filing claims with insurance companies, so there's no lawsuits involved unless it's necessary. We do file lawsuits when it's necessary. If an insurance company isn't going to cooperate and the client wants to pursue a lawsuit, we're happy to do so, but we're not filing lawsuits every day. Next slide.
Okay, some story time. Story time. So these are some real life examples. We've already given a few, but of cases we've had in our office that you'll see the interplay of the different insurance coverages they had available, and some were great and worked out, and some didn't work out so good. So this first story is a really, it was a tragic story. There was a drunk driver driving down the road, hit something. She thought she'd hit a deer, and it turned out to be a bicycle rider. Threw him into the ditch. He did not die, but severely fractured his leg, and just a really terrible, very fortunate that it wasn't more than that. Several surgeries, things like that, and the person had $10,000 in BI coverage. A case like that is worth much, much more than $10,000. I would assume that the bills were more in line with what Janine said, probably in the $50,000 range. So thankfully, he had coverage, and in that situation, he would have used the underinsured motorist coverage because the person had coverage, but it was just under what the coverage was for. So he was able to get the BI policy from the at-fault party, and he was also able to get his full policy tendered. Still wasn't enough money, but at least he wasn't in the hole big. He used that money to help pay off any balances he had, and we were able to get him a halfway decent settlement. If he hadn't had the though, he would have been in debt from this accident. The bicyclist had the uninsured motorist on his car, and then that follows you around just when you're on your bike. Do you have to go through a lawsuit to get general liability? I think what you're talking about is the BI coverage, and that rider was able to get BI coverage, but it was only $10,000. You could have sued that driver individually, and you could have pursued a judgment. It takes approximately 18 to 24 months to actually get to a jury trial these days, and it costs somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 to actually pursue the case. At the end of that, the jury, if we had done that and the jury does a good job, you win the case, the judge, all he can do is give you a piece of paper. And that piece of paper is a judgment. Go get the money from that person. You're never going to see a penny. That's the reality of those situations. So that's why it's so important to have the uninsured motorist on the back end of those cases, because it prevents you from having to from either going into debt or having to sue for money you're never going to get. The second example is we had a trail up in Columbia County that was not well maintained, and a bicycle rider was coming home from work and came around the corner and slipped on an unmaintained portion of that trail on some algae. And that was a very hotly contested case because algae is a naturally occurring surface problem in Florida and different things like that. But we actually had to file a lawsuit on that one, and we were able to recover damages for that individual. He ended up falling. You can imagine he came around a corner, fell on his right hip, broke his hip, shattered it, had to get it rebuilt. Didn't own a car. Oh, no. The accident didn't involve a car. So PIP doesn't come into play. doesn't come into play because it didn't involve a car. So we were going after the liability policy of the maintenance company who was supposed to take care of the trail. And so after about 2 years of litigation, they finally settled that case. And again, we were able to help that individual get out of that medical debt and get a little compensation for his pain and suffering. Number 3, car versus bike. This is not as good of a story. A young man was riding his bike on near campus. It was on 13th and one of those roads. I think it's where they built the new CVS, and came out and a car ran right into his left leg, fractured it, immediately taken to Shands Hospital. They had to put a titanium rod in his leg. He's about a 21-year-old young man, really nice kid. The car who hit him, $10,000 in coverage. His mother had $300,000 of BI. We didn't tell you this, but I'll tell you this now. You're only allowed to have as much as you carry BI. So I'm looking down the line. I'm like, please be $300,000 in They had waived it. They had waived it, which you're allowed to do. It's not smart, but their agent told them, oh, if you have health insurance, you're going to be fine. If you have health, you're fine. You don't need all that coverage. What that ended up doing, yes, he got his bills paid, but he didn't get any money for pain and suffering. He didn't get any money for future pain and suffering. His inability to lead his normal life as a 21, we're talking about a $500,000 case there, just pure damages, and he got $10,000. Again, your option, you can sue the driver. That's correct. It was a terrible, terrible job by the agent. That's all I can say. Yeah. You carry liability coverage to protect yourself in case you cause an accident. So yeah, you want liability coverage too, but you should always go ahead and get the which you can actually do something called stacked. So stacked, we didn't teach you guys this, but I'll teach you now. Stacked coverage on say you had a $300,000 policy and you had 2 cars and you stacked it. That means you have $600,000 of available coverage under So you can do, it's 600 instead of 300. That'd be your limit. Yes. And so for anyone covered on that policy, you would have the ability to have that. Okay. Correct. General liability is in place. If you cause an accident and you get sued, it's also the coverage you're looking for from the at-fault party if you get injured by somebody else's fault. And that's the BI, bodily injury, or general liability. You can call it the same. The last example we have from the story time slide is a phantom vehicle. We had it was a 40-year-old man riding over there by the UF track and the UF tennis center, and he was coming, he was in the road, going with traffic, doing everything like Marie taught you, as far right as he could be, and he came to that kind of dangerous intersection, and as he came through, he was hit by a car. He doesn't know where it came from. He doesn't know who it was. He just knows that he was hit by a car, and he woke up in the middle of the intersection, and the car was gone. So, where do we look on this one? You're not going to get any BI coverage because you don't know who hit you. So there's no general liability coverage to get because the person's gone. So he had to look to his own policy, his own auto policy, and thankfully he had $200,000 worth of uninsured motorist coverage. So he went through a few months of therapy, and we were able to get him a settlement because he had covered himself on his auto policy for a bicycle accident. Okay, next slide.
Alrighty, we're almost done here. Couple of safety tips for the road if you are riding a bicycle. Always have your phone with you or something where you can call the police or take pictures. Always, always, always have your phone with you if possible. I put wear a helmet on here. I know that it is not the law. You do not have to wear a helmet if you're riding a bicycle. I'm putting it in as a suggestion. We're accident attorneys. We deal with injuries all day long. We've seen head injuries. And another thing to consider, if you're not wearing a helmet, we have a case going on right now that involves a motorcycle, and a female was riding on the back of the motorcycle, was not wearing a helmet. She suffered a head injury, And if we were to go to trial on that case, there would be something that the defense attorney would bring up called mitigation of damages. Fancy legal term for saying you didn't do everything you could to protect yourself, so we're not going to fully compensate you for it. Again, it's not the law to wear a helmet, but it's just something to consider as a safety measure to protect your head. And another thing is, I know it is the law to have lights or a light on your bicycle, and you can check it out in the pamphlet. I know it's in there, but make sure you have a light if you are driving after sunset or before sunrise. Guess it's the same thing. All right, next slide. Okay, so now this is I just want to introduce the rest of our firm who couldn't be here tonight. This is Gerald Schackow. This is actually Brian's dad. He has been a partner at the firm. He's been practicing law for over 50 years. Very experienced. This is Lynn Schackow. You're seeing a trend here. They're all family. This is Brian's sister. She's of counsel. She's not fully practicing law, but she still gives a lot of advice to our cases. And that's Steve Mercadante in the middle. He's one of the partners, and he's been practicing over 35 years, I believe. And you know me and Brian, and this is our group. And if you ever have any questions about anything, please feel free to call us. Our phone number is at the bottom, 352-371-3000. But we know that you guys have been asking questions all along, but we want to give some opportunity for you to ask questions if you have any.